There was pretty high expectations for 2015 in terms of AAA games, some of which had been delayed from 2014. A lot of games came out this year that were highly anticipated, such as Fallout 4, The Witcher 3, Batman Arkham Knight. So without further ado, I present my list of my favorite games from 2015. Note that none of these are in any particular order, save for my number one game of the year, which is without a doubt my game of the year. SOMA completely slipped under the radar when it came out back in September, which is a real shame. SOMA is an indie horror game developed by Frictional Games, the creators of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, a game that I didn't enjoy at all, but SOMA is quite different from it. To put it simply, SOMA is what would happen if you mashed BioShock and Alien Isolation together, minus any form of combat, because SOMA doesn't have any. SOMA would fall more into the walking simulator category, but avoids that label by featuring puzzles and monsters to outwit in between the exploration. The main draw of this game is the atmosphere and narrative, and it delivers those in spades. It presents a very interesting moral question that I won't spoil here. The environments are genuinely unsettling in and of themselves, and there's thankfully not many jump scares to speak of in SOMA, and that's a welcome change. This game is available both on PC, on Steam, and on PS4, and it's around $20 when it's not on sale. You should definitely pick this up if it sounds interesting to you. Like I mentioned, fans of BioShock, Alien Isolation, and even stuff like Dear Esther will really appreciate this game and have a lot of fun with it. I've been anticipating this game ever since its reveal, back when it was just called X. So much so that I bought a Wii U 2 years back so I could eventually play it. And now that I've played it, I have to say that I'm quite satisfied. I'm not necessarily blown away by it, but I'm satisfied with it. If you've played the original Xenoblade, then this game won't surprise you. It is essentially a massive single-player MMO. The combat is real-time, with cooldown management being one of the bigger components here. The one negative thing about this game is the localization, though. Some of the voice acting is terrible, and many of the songs have been altered from their original versions with English vocals, and it's not for the better. Other than that, there's not much to be said about Xenoblade X. It's massive, it's very long, and you'll get your money's worth out of it for sure. Definitely a must-own for all you Wii U owners if you still exist. Xbox had a really great year in 2015, and while this new Tomb Raider game is only a timed exclusive, PC players, you'll be getting your chance to play very soon. Xbox will, however, continue to enjoy console exclusivity on Tomb Raider until at least holiday of 2016 when it comes to PlayStation 4. Rise of the Tomb Raider isn't reinventing the wheel, but that's perfectly fine. 2013's Tomb Raider left little to complain about. It was a highly polished AAA action-adventure game, much in the same vein as Naughty Dog's Uncharted series, which ironically owes quite a bit to the original Tomb Raider games, which owe a lot to Indiana Jones, but that's not a rabbit hole I want to go down right now. Rise of the Tomb Raider continues to set itself apart from Uncharted by its decidedly more serious tone, rather than in its gameplay. Much like its 2013 predecessor, it takes a more survivalist, dire approach, rather than a globe-trotting, fun one. The graphics in this game are out of this world, though, and that's just on Xbox One. I can't imagine what it'll look like on a high-end PC. I debated whether or not to put this game on the list. The reasons not to are numerous. The worst campaign in Halo history, lack of fan-favorite features on day one that we've grown accustomed to, and the inclusion of microtransactions are just a few of the sins that this game has committed. However, the arena combat is nothing short of stellar. It is handedly the best multiplayer shooter of the year, or even multiplayer game I've played in general this year. I still find myself coming back for more and more Halo 5 multiplayer, and every time I do, it seems there's a bevy of new maps and playlists to enjoy. The reworking of the Spartan abilities is the best design choice that was made in this game. While they were at first an enjoyable novelty way back when in Halo Reach, it didn't take long for the clearly OP powers to become widely adopted. This trend was compounded upon in Halo 4, when classes were introduced. When these two elements came together, it was like bleach and ammonia. In 5, everyone has powers, but they're all the same powers, which keeps things on a level playing field. They also added ADS to every single weapon, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of, but it doesn't seem to be breaking anything in my experience so far. It also turns out that the fools that are buying the microtransactions are in turn funding Halo 5's completely free to everyone DLC every month. The lack of modes like Forge and Big Team Battle at Halo 5's launch are not something that should be excused or forgotten, but at least 343 gave them to us for free, albeit at a later date. The campaign, though, really, just fucking atrocious. They should be embarrassed about that. I think we should warp the Infinity out of here. To say I was anticipating Fallout 4 would be the understatement of the century. I've been waiting for this game for a very, very, very long time. I've been there for every hoax, every letdown. Who could forget the Survivor 2299? But now Fallout 4 has been released, and I've played a lot of it. While I enjoyed the time I spent with it, I can't help but feel a little empty after experiencing almost everything that it has to offer. It kind of feels as if Bethesda had a checklist of things to include, rather than a coherent, holistic vision. However, it's odd that I came to this conclusion when Bethesda has genuinely improved upon Fallout 3 and New Vegas in every conceivable way, but only on a mechanical level. This is what led to my and many others' initially positive response to the game. Finally, a Fallout game where we don't have to rely on VATS as a crutch for combat and go into a pause screen every time we loot. However, upon closer inspection, and with hindsight, I have to say that the fond memories I have of 3 and New Vegas weren't replicated here. Fallout 4 has no Paradise Falls. There is no Power of Atom Megaton moment. There's not even an abundance of fun, sometimes dark Easter egg humor like there was in New Vegas. That's not to say that I hated or even disliked the side quests in 4, but no memorable moment is sticking with me, even such a short time after the game has been released. I did review this game when it came out, and I mostly stand by that review and the points I made in it, but in retrospect, I probably would have docked the score by another half point or even a whole point. This is a best of the year list though, and I do have some genuinely nice things to say about Fallout 4. For one, the gameplay. Again, it's great. The FPS combat is probably the best part of this game, which is odd to say. And while the quests might not have been as memorable as I'd have liked them to be, there is an abundance of them, and they are of generally very high quality. A lot of fan wishes have been granted here too, like the insane amount of weapon customization and extensive settlement building. If nothing else, Fallout 4 is at least a good, if not great, action RPG that has a living, breathing open world that's a joy to explore. It might not be a landmark game, or even a memorable one, but when judged on its own merits, it does deserve to be on this list, and it's definitely worth playing. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, another one that just really tears me apart inside. On one hand, it is one of the more accomplished games in the franchise in terms of its gameplay, but on the other hand, it's a massive disappointment in the story and narrative department, and let's be honest here, that's where most would expect a Kojima game to shine. But no, nope. And that's really shocking to me, especially coming off of Ground Zeroes, which, while that game was criminally short and super overpriced for what it was, it had very artistic cutscenes that were so well directed and visually impressive. Unfortunately, for the most part, this does not carry over into the Phantom Pain. There's only a handful of cutscenes and story beats to speak of in the Phantom Pain, and we get the very best ones in the beginning of the game during the hospital sequence, which is phenomenal, by the way, but why aren't there more? We'll get back to this a little bit later. So the gameplay in MGS5 is incredible, the visuals are stunning, and the 60 FPS on Xbox One, PS4, and most reasonably modern PCs helps to enhance both. In fact, the Fox engine itself is worth praising. It's a true feat that they were able to achieve rock-solid 60 FPS on both next-gen consoles at 1080p, whilst maintaining such a high level of graphical fidelity. On PC, where I played, it's incredibly well optimized, and can achieve console-equivalent performance on even lower-end PC builds. Kudos for that, Kojima. MGS5 also includes a bevy of content and a multiplayer component that console players are loving. Unfortunately, PC players are still waiting for Metal Gear Online, but it should be out by the end of the month. Even without the online, players can expect to easily get 40 to 60 hours out of the single player, and you won't be bored during that time either. There's an almost overwhelming amount of player agency in this game. One of my favorite moments while playing was a mission where I was to dispose of multiple tanks and APCs, but I just couldn't get enough rockets and explosives to deal with them all, so I went online and watched someone else do the mission, and to my amusement, someone else on YouTube had completed the mission in record time with an S rating by sneaking behind the tanks and Fultoning them. It's that brand of comically bizarre moments that make the Metal Gear franchise so memorable to the hardcore fan base, and there are plenty of these moments to be had in the Phantom Pain, and they all happened rather organically at that. To go back to what I was mentioning earlier, there are 2 chapters in the single-player campaign, but it has been revealed that there was a 3rd chapter that was cut from the game, as well as numerous story elements. It's incredibly disheartening to see this happen when MGS5 would otherwise have been one of the better games in the saga. The worst part is, I don't know who to blame. Kojima? Konami? Okay, probably Konami. While Fallout 4 and MGS5 may have been the games I heavily anticipated this year, Bloodborne is the one that I'll remember for years to come. When I first laid my eyes upon the then-named Project Beast's leaked footage, this game landed on my radar. Little did I know that it would become by far and away the best game I would play in 2015. From Software have managed to fix every single gripe I had with the original Dark Souls combat. Bloodborne rewards aggressive play, and punishes those who rely on passive tactics. The only shield in Bloodborne is a joke that informs you that there are no shields in Bloodborne. All the weapons have an immensely satisfying transformation mode that activates with the left bumper, and the classic parry has been replaced with a shooting mechanic. That's not to say that Bloodborne is so far removed from Dark Souls that it feels alien to players that are used to the original games, but it improves upon its predecessors and differentiates itself enough to make it one of the most enjoyable and rewarding combat systems I've ever played. All of this fantastic gameplay would be nothing if not encapsulated within the brilliant aesthetic that is Bloodborne's art direction. The mix of beautiful architecture, disturbing imagery, and outfits that look like they wandered off a Rick Owens runway, combined with the stunning original score, all serve to strengthen the potency of this phenomenal game. Each area feels unique, a world within itself, and the boss designs in Bloodborne, just wow, some of the best looking I've ever seen in games, and again, they're complemented by the score and simply would not be the same without it. However, it would be remiss of me to not mention my negative first impressions of this game. When I first booted up Bloodborne, I was immediately taken aback by what appeared to be persistent frame drops in addition to load times that took a century. The loading issue was patched very soon after launch, but those visual hitches that I perceived to be frame drops turned out to mostly be a frame pacing issue. This, combined with Bloodborne's target of 30 FPS, did make it somewhat frustrating to play. However, I quickly adjusted to it, and it wasn't a deal breaker in the end. The issue with frames is still there to this day, but it seems to be much less an issue than it was back then. I hate that these issues were and are still there, and I have to mention them, as performance is a huge deal to me, and I hope that From Software can fix these issues with the engine before Dark Souls 3 comes out. While Bloodborne may start out as a twisted gothic epic, it mutates further and further into an esoteric nightmare the longer you play. This is an adventure game in the truest sense of the term. Each boss, each level is an insurmountable task to be beaten by, but ultimately conquered, all in the interest of continuing the journey. It's games like Bloodborne that remind me why I like games. The sensation that Bloodborne gives is one that only a video game can provide. Making the player feel empowered and badass without holding their hand or guiding them through a heavily scripted event is a phenomenon sorely missing from today's gaming landscape. This is also inadvertently the best horror game since PT, especially when you dig into the dark and enigmatic lore that is hidden within the depths of this game. I can't help but think of Bloodborne as video games twisted, disturbed, Lovecraftian response to the Odyssey. Bloodborne is one long journey, a nightmare that doesn't end, that is punishing in both its audio-visual presentation and its challenging gameplay. All of this combines to make what is easily my favorite game of 2015, a game that is unique, innovative, and different than anything else that I've played this year.
Kosm, or some say kosm. Do you hear our prayers? No, we shall not abandon the dream. No one can catch us. No one